Right now, somewhere out there on the internet, there are, thousands of incredibly dedicated fans scrubbing through the background frames of your favorite new animators.
Oh, absolutely. Frame by agonizing frame.
Literally frame by frame. They are playing this sort of digital detective, zooming in on background characters, and they're looking for like six-fingered hands or asymmetrical eyeballs.
Or those swords that just sort of melt into a pillar halfway down the screen.
Yes, exactly. And why are they doing this? Because, well, the biggest open secret in the global entertainment industry right now is that everyone is using generative AI.
Yeah.
And everyone is absolutely terrified to admit it.
Right, because the gap between the magical illusion presented on screen and the industrial reality of how that screen actually gets filled, it's never been wider.
Yeah.
We are looking at a medium that's currently producing some of the most globally demanded content in human history, but it's relying on a structural foundation that is entirely cracking under the pressure of that exact demand.
Okay. Let's unpack this, because today we are jumping into a massive deep dive based on a pretty fiery behind-the-scenes discussion from the YouTube channel Clown.
Right.
We're looking at commentary from hosts Neon and Geeky Sparkles, and the mission today is to completely strip away the corporate PR jargon. We really want to look at the uncomfortable reality of the animation industry right now exactly as they present it.
Yeah, we're exploring this explosive claim that every single animation studio has already integrated AI into their pipe.
Which is wild, and we'll look at the brutal economics driving this massive shift. Plus, there's this staggering disconnect between what fans demand, what Western studios claim they're doing, and what overseas animators are actually experiencing on the ground.
Exactly. And just to set the analytical stage for a conversation here, this isn't a deep dive about litigating whether AI is inherently a good or a bad tool.
Yeah.
Our goal is to dissect the raw business reality and the industry mechanics outlined in this source material, because the Clownfish TV commentary gets quite passionate. It's often cynical, and it touches on some politically tinged viewpoints regarding like corporate executive greed, massive environmental impacts, and global labor conditions.
Yeah, they really go in on it.
They do. And we aren't here to take a side or moralize on those debates. We're just here to unpack the arguments impartially so you can understand the actual architecture of this industry crisis.
I mean, we really just want to give you the blueprint of what they're saying.
Right. And if you want a visual for what's happening, picture a massive, bustling, neon-lit cyberpunk corporate machine, but physically chained to its gears are hundreds of traditional wooden animation drafting tables. It's this violent collision of old-school art and new-school algorithmic technology.
Oh, that visual perfectly captured, because it's this weird collision right now where the traditional craft is squeezed by the corporate algorithm.
Squeeze hard.
Yeah. And that squeeze starts with what the source calls the open secret of the core claim here is incredibly blunt, which is that all animations are already using AI in their pipeline, but they're going to extreme lengths to hide it.
What's fascinating here is the sheer level of corporate anxiety surrounding this technology.
Sure.
I mean, the commentators point out that companies are obscuring their AI usage specifically because they are terrified of getting, well, in their words, canceled on Blue Sky or completely ostracized by their industry peers.
Wait, let's contextualize that for a second, because cancel on Blue Sky is a very specific fear, right?
Oh, very specific.
Because Blue Sky is the social media platform where a massive portion of the vocal online art community kind of migrated over the last couple. And it has a culture that is fiercely protective of human-made art and honestly incredibly hostile to generative algorithms.
Highly.
Yeah.
If a studio even hints at using generative AI, the backlash from fans and fellow artists on that platform isn't just a minor PR headache.
No, it's a nightmare.
It is instantaneous, it's severe, and it's highly organized. It threatens the core brand loyalty that these studios rely on to survive.
So to navigate this minefield, corporations have to employ what we can really only call linguistic gymnastics.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And the Clownfish TV hosts point to the tabletop gaming industry as the ultimate tested blueprint for this kind of corporate deception.
Oh, right. Like Hasbro.
Specifically highlighting Hasbro.
Yeah.
And the controversies that have erupted in spaces like Dungeons & Dragons or Magic, The Gathering. When fans spotted art that was suspiciously algorithmic, the company had...
And the response is where the magic trick happens, right? Because the source highlights the specific PR speak these companies. They'll put out a highly polished statement saying something like, "We promise the final product won't go out the door without you."
Which sounds incredibly comforting on the surface.
Totally.
It evokes this image of a dedicated artist meticulously crafting the product. But the translation of that phrase, according to the source, is entirely different.
What does it actually mean?
Well, human review does not mean we did not use AI. It means we absolutely used an algorithm to generate the bulk of this content, but we paid a human being a fraction of a normal artist's rate to double-check it.
Oh, wow, just to clean it up.
Right, to paint over the hallucinatory artifacts, fix the weird geometry, and polish it just enough to pass inspection before release.
It's a masterclass in technically telling the truth while entirely relying on the consumer to misunderstand them.
Exactly.
It reminds me of how food companies market ultra-processed snacks. Like they will slap a giant, beautiful green label on a box of cookies that says, made with natural ingredients.
Oh, yeah. The hell halo.
Yeah, and you buy it thinking you're making a healthy choice. But if you dig into the fine print and trace the supply chain, you realize the natural ingredient is literally just the municipal tap water they use to hose down the artificial flavor vats.
That's a great analogy.
They aren't lying to the FDA, but they are absolutely tricking you.
And that corporate sleight of hand is the exact mechanism at play here. Because from a business perspective, as we'll get into, these executives feel they can't afford not to use AI. The cost and time savings are simply too massive to ignore.
Right.
But simultaneously, they cannot afford the PR hit of proudly announcing it. So they exist in this murky middle ground of plausible deniability.
Which directly fuels the gotcha culture the source spends time breaking down. Because the fans aren't stupid. They know the studios are trying to thread this needle.
Oh, they're very aware.
So you have people, and the video suggests maybe it's unemployed animators who are furious about the state of the industry, or just incredibly bored fans treating every new release like a literal crime scene.
Yeah.
They are pausing video games. They are scrubbing through anime frame by frame.
They're hunting for the telltale signatures of latent diffusion model.
Yeah.
They're looking for temporal inconsistency.
Like what?
Like where a character's jacket has a pocket in frame A, but then in frame B, that pocket mysteriously morphs into a zipper.
Right.
Or they're looking for background crowds where the faces melt together, or architectural lines in a cityscape that just don't obey the laws of perspective. And the goal is to isolate that artifact, post it online, and spark a viral scandal.
It's a digital witch hunt. But the source makes a very pragmatic, almost chilling point about this dynamic. For every one gaming developer or animation studio that gets busted by these online detectives and forced to issue an apology, there are 30 other studios using the exact same tools who just did a better job of having a human evidence.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the outrage cycle is effectively acting as quality control for the studio's AI pipeline.
Oh man, that is so bleak.
It is. The more the fans find the mistakes, the better the studios get at hiding them. It fundamentally shifts our relationship with media. I mean, it makes you wonder how many times you've read a corporate commitment to human artists statement and totally missed the exact legal phrasing they use to maintain their automated workflow.
It completely changes how you read a press. You stop looking for what they are saying and you start looking for the loopholes in how they're saying it.
Exactly.
But this leads to the massive question of why. Like, why take this massive PR? Why risk infuriating your core audience?
Right.
Because, as the source bluntly states, animation is hella expensive.
The economics are absolutely ruthless. And we tend to view animation through a deeply romanticized lens, don't we?
Definitely.
We see it as a pure artistic medium. But this commentary actively strips that romanticism away. The argument here is that to the executives financing these projects, animation is strictly a product to be shipped. It is a widget. It's not an artsy-fartsy passion project.
They draw this incredibly stark contrast between the Western mindset of animation and the Japanese industry mind. And to hammer this home, they bring up a quote attributed to Pixar's Pete Docter.
Ah, yes. The therapy quote.
Yeah, where he allegedly told creators, "We're not paying for your therapy anymore."
That quote is a fascinating distillation of the current corporate pushback against auteur theory. I mean, the commentators use that line to aggressively critique a specific type of Western creator.
How so?
Well, they argue there's a culture in the West where directors want to use hundreds of millions of dollars of a massive conglomerate's money to tell a deeply personal, emotionally cathartic, hyper-niche story.
Great.
Essentially using the studio budget to ensure their soul is clean.
Meanwhile, in Japan, the reality is portrayed as entirely alien to that concept. The source frames the anime industry not as a collective of sensitive, visionary artists trying to change the world, but as a highly tuned, ruthless merchandise.
A literal machine.
Yeah. The anime itself, the actual show you watch on your screen, is almost secondary. It's essentially a 24-minute commercial designed to move physical product.
And the example Clownfish TV uses to illustrate this is the Evangelion franchise, which is perfect because Neon Genesis Evangelion is historically viewed as this legendary, philosophically dense, deeply personal anime.
Oh, it's revered.
But the source claims that when they made the recent rebuild of Evangelion movies, the studio added a brand new character, a girl with glasses named Mari Illustrious, for absolutely zero narrative purpose.
The way they describe it is wild. They argue Mari was inserted solely because the franchise already had two iconic female leads that had been merchandised to death over the last 2 decades.
Right, they had tapped out that market.
Yeah, so adding a third girl meant they could open up entirely new manufacturing lines for, quote, waifu knickknacks, body pillows, and plastic figures. The phrasing they use is basically, forget the artistic vision, put another girl in it so we have more product to sell.
It's all about the...
But let me push back on that pure cynicism. Is it entirely fair to say a character was created solely for a body pillow?
That's a fair question.
Because even if we accept that the ultimate goal is selling a piece of plastic, doesn't that character still have to resonate with the audience emotionally to sell that merch in the first place? I mean, if Mari is just a soulless cardboard cutout, nobody's dropping $80 on her action figure. The art still has to function as art to work as commerce, right?
I'd argue it goes deeper into the structural mechanics of how these shows are funded, which the source addresses by bringing up Terumi Nishi.
Right, the director who worked on Jujutsu Kaisen.
Yes, Nishi points to the production committee system. And this is crucial for understanding the Japanese model. Because in the West, a single studio like Netflix or Disney usually foots the bill and owns the rest.
Right, they write the big check.
Exactly. But in Japan, a production committee is a consortium. It's a group of, say, 5 to 10 different companies. You've got a toy manufacturer, a music label, a television network, an international streaming distributor, and they all pool their money to fund the anime.
Okay, so they spread the financial risk around. If the show flops, nobody goes bankrupt.
Precisely. But the trade-off is that the anime must service the business needs of every single company on that committee. So Nishi explicitly describes companies like Aniplex, which is a subsidiary of Sony, as a manufacturing enterprise.
Wow.
They are not an art collector. If the toy company on the committee needs a new character to hit their third quarter revenue targets, the anime studio is going to write in a new character.
A manufacturing enterprise, that really strips the magic out of it, doesn't it?
It completely reorients the entire purpose of the medium. The anime advertises the manga advertises the vinyl figures, the figures advertise the mobile gacha game. It's an ecosystem.
Yeah.
And if the overriding goal of the committee is pure volume, moving as much product off the physical and digital shelves as possible, then anything that slows down the manufacturing line is a catastrophic bottleneck.
And what's the biggest bottleneck in animation?
Human being.
Yeah.
Human burnout. The sheer physical time it takes for a human hand to draw thousands of frames. And that structural reality is exactly why they have to push for generative AI.
And that bottleneck, the human element, brings us to the absolute labor crisis currently ripping through the anime. Because the way the source describes the human cost of this machine is genuinely horrifying.
It is grim.
We're talking about a system where young Japanese people are looking at the animation industry and smartly deciding to completely avoid it. They're running the other way because of what the commentators bluntly describe as slave wages and abhorrent working conditions.
The grueling nature of the Japanese animation pipeline has been an open secret for years, but the source argues it's reached a breaking point, and it's now visibly impacting the final product on screen.
Right.
They pose the question of why modern anime often looks bad or suffers from severe animation degradation compared to the meticulously crafted films of previous decades.
And the answer?
It's simple supply and demand economics.
The global demand for anime has skyrocketed.
Absolutely.
I mean, every streaming platform on Earth wants their own exclusive anime hits to drive.
They need content desperately.
But the studios physically cannot keep up with the orders. The schedules have completely collapsed. So what do? They cut corners.
Big time.
They drop the frame rates. They simplify the character designs. They rush the compositing. They do whatever it takes just to get the product shipped by the broadcast deadline.
And here's where the Clownfish TV commentary gets incredibly pointed, because they shift their focus from Tokyo to Los Angeles.
This part is fascinating.
They target Western animation studios and highlight a massive structural hypocrisy in the global supply chain of art. They delve into the mechanics of the outsourcing loophole.
Right. So a Western studio executive might proudly stand up on a stage at Comic-Con or, post a long thread on X declaring, "We are committed to human artists. We promise we aren't using AI on this upcoming animated."
Right, and they get a massive round of applause.
A huge round of applause. But the reality is they then take the actual grueling day-to-day, frame-by-frame animation work and they outsource it to an overseas studio in South Korea or the Philippines or Japan.
The Western studio handles the pre-production. The scripts, the voice acting, the initial storyboards, and then they ship the heavy lifting offshore to save money.
Exactly.
And according to the source, those overseas studios are absolutely using AI. They have to hit the punishing deadlines and budget constraints imposed by the Western contract.
They just aren't telling their Western bosses.
Or, more likely, the Western bosses are practicing willful ignorance, so long as the final files are delivered on time and the AI artifacts aren't glaringly obvious.
It's a complete washing of their hands. The commentators are highly critical of what they view as extreme Western privilege in this dynamic.
Well, they don't hold back.
No. They talk about seeing Western animation workers boasting on social media about their incredible working conditions, having robust health insurance, clocking out right at 5 p.m., taking their weekends off, and utilizing generous mental health days.
Now, while the source doesn't argue that workers shouldn't have those benefits, the sting in the critique is entirely about how those benefits are subsidized.
Right.
The argument is that Western workers can only enjoy a comfortable, balanced lifestyle because they pawn the brutal physical reality of the labor off onto overseas sweatshops.
It's like that one person in a college group project who proudly calls themselves the ideas guy and goes to sleep at 9 p.m., right? While the rest of the group is pulling an all-nighter to actually write the paper.
That is painfully accurate.
The Western creators come up with the high-level concept, but they offshore the suffering.
And the dynamic includes with the Western creators taking all the public credit. I mean, when the show wins an Emmy, the Western teams exchange the fist bumps, they walk the red carpets, and celebrate their artistic achievement.
While the overseas labor force who actually ground out the thousands of frames in high-pressure conditions remains entirely invisible to the audience.
Completely invisible.
And if the human workforce is physically breaking under the demand and the global studios refuse to slow down their output, they literally have no choice but to automate. Which brings us perfectly to the core argument of the absolute inevitability of AI integration.
It really is inevitable. The source makes it crystal clear. This isn't some looming sci-fi threat on the horizon. It is currently happening in the pipelines right now.
Let's bring Terumi Nishi back into the conversation, because the Jujutsu Kaisen director explicitly states that major companies have already widely adopted these algorithmic practices. This isn't just theory anymore, is it?
No, it's operational protocol. Nishi notes that studios are currently developing highly specialized generative models, and they're trained to replicate the specific storyboarding styles of individual artists.
Wait, so they aren't just using a generic AI, they are feeding it a specific director's past work so the machine can mimic their exact visual language.
Exactly. They use these custom models to generate rapid, rough drafts of scene, and then the human directors take those algorithmic roughs and revise them.
Oh, man.
It literally flips the artist from a creator of original concepts to an editor of machine-generated volume.
That's a huge paradigm shift.
Massive. And Nishi points out that major entities like Toei Animation are actively pouring resources into AI research and development specifically to boost operational efficiency.
And Nishi makes a great point about the financial paper trail. If a massive company like Aniplex claims they aren't using AI, Nishi argues their claims lack any credibility because the industry knows they are already paying exorbitant licensing fees to tech companies for enterprise access to these very...
Right. Why would a famously ruthless manufacturing enterprise pay millions of dollars for an enterprise AI license if they aren't plugging it into their production line?
They wouldn't. They just wouldn't.
Which leads to the most visceral analogy the Clownfish TV hosts use to explain why studios have zero choice but to adopt this technology. They call it the steroids analogy.
Yes. Neon argues that if you are running a studio and all of your competitors start using AI pipelines to drastically cut their production costs and massively increase their profit margin, it's basically everybody's on steroids except for you.
Exactly. If you stubbornly refuse to take the steroids out of some sense of artistic purity, do you have any chance whatsoever of staying competitive in the marketplace?
The source says absolutely no. The bank doesn't care if your soul is clean.
No, they don't.
The bank doesn't accept moral superiority as a mortgage payment. You still have to, in their blunt phrasing, put the fries in the bag. You have to keep your job, ship the product, and make money.
It's pure survival.
But let me challenge that steroids analogy for a second, because I think it misses the macroeconomic reality of what happens when everyone...
Okay, how so?
Well, in professional sports, if one guy takes steroids, he hits 50 more home runs than everyone else. But if everyone starts taking steroids, nobody actually gets an advantage anymore. The baseline just shifts upward.
Right.
So if every single animation studio adopts AI to cut costs and work twice as fast, do they actually get ahead? Or do the animators just end up having to do way more work under the exact same amount of intense, crushing stress, just at a vastly higher volume to meet the new normal?
You've hit on the exact dark side of corporate efficiency, and the history of labor absolutely bears your theory out. The baseline shifts.
It always does.
When corporate executives talk about operational efficiency or time-saving tools, they almost never mean using those tools to give their workers more free time, better pay, or a healthier work-life balance.
Never.
They mean extracting more output using the exact same resource.
And to back up this idea of a shifting baseline, The source points directly to the history of the animation industry itself. They draw a very specific historical parallel between this current AI transition and previous massive technologies.
Right, like the shift to digital art.
Exactly. When artists had to abandon pen, paper, and physical paint for Photoshop, layers, and Wacom drawing tablets.
And they also point to the seismic industry pivot in the late 90s and early 2000s, from traditional hand-drawn 2D animation to 3D computer-generated animation championed by early Pixar and DreamWorks.
And what was the historical outcome of those massive shifts? According to the source, it was utterly ruthless. The veteran artists who dug their heels in, who held their breath, turned blue in the face, and stubbornly refused to adapt to digital software weren't rewarded for their dedication to the pure craft.
Not at all.
They were simply pushed out of the industry entirely, their jobs vanished.
And the commentators warn that the exact same dynamic is playing out right now with generative AI.
Yeah.
I mean, to the corporate entities funding the art, this is not a moral debate about the sanctity of the human soul.
Yeah.
It's just industrial evolution. You adapt to the new machinery, or you are replaced by someone who will.
Evolve or get left behind. It is a brutal reality check. And it forces us to look at the macro picture of where this technology is actually dragging us. Because the source does spend time exploring the potential outcomes of this migration, weighing the supposed silver linings against what they call the dark side of the moon.
Let's start with the hope versus the reality for the animators themselves. Because there is an optimistic narrative here.
The tech evangelist pit.
Right. The silver lining that they pitch is that AI will act as a necessary pressure release valve. The idea is that it'll be used as a tool to relieve those severely overworked Japanese animators we discussed earlier.
Yeah.
It'll automate the tedious in-between frames, finally allowing these artists to go home at a decent time, escape the crushing crunch culture, and actually have a life outside the studio walls.
That is the utopian dream, right? But then the source immediately crushes that dream with the reality of how corporate executives actually hate the bean counters, as they call them.
Yeah, the bean counters.
Because as we discussed with the shifting baseline, the executives aren't going to look at AI making a process 50% faster and say, great, our team can rest for half the week now.
Of course not. They are going to realize that they can now produce 2 or 3 entire anime series for the exact same budget and time it used to cost to make one.
The workers won't get a raise, and they certainly won't get more sleep. They will simply be expected to produce 3 times the amount of product.
3 times the anime, 3 times the merchandise, 3 times the waifu figures for the production committee to sell.
Yeah, the underlying grinding business model doesn't change at all. Treadmill just accelerates, terrifying.
And that technological acceleration doesn't just impact the artist. It has massive global macroeconomic co-host Geeky Sparkles brings up the severe environmental and economic backlash of this entire AI.
This was a really...
She points out that to run these complex generative models, tech companies are having to construct massive, incredibly power-hungry data centers all over the world.
And her critique really taps into a growing global anxiety. These tech conglomerates are building infrastructure that requires staggering amounts of electricity and water for cooling, which significantly impacts local environment powers.
It's a huge strain.
And to add insult to injury, local governments are often giving these massive corporations huge tax breaks to build these centers, all under the guise of tech innovation.
So the public is essentially subsidizing the very technology that is actively displacing human jobs while simultaneously straining their local environment.
Yeah, and she jokes, out of pure frustration, that if these tech giants absolutely must build these massive energy-sucking data centers, they should be forced to put them on the dark side of the moon where nobody can see them.
It's a humorous line, but it masks a deep systemic frustration about the physical infrastructure required to power what we generally think of as an invisible digital technology. I mean, the cloud isn't in the sky.
No, it's not.
It's a massive warehouse consuming gigawatts of power.
Put the data centers on the moon. I mean, it really highlights how absurd the scale of this has become. But amidst all the cynicism, all the labor exploitation and environmental dread, the source does point out one truly wild, completely unintended consequence of AI that is currently happening.
Right, and changing internet culture in real time.
Yes, it is completely dissolving global language.
This is a profound secondary effect. They note the impact on how international fan bases communicate, specifically regarding manga and social media, because historically there was a massive wall between Japanese creators and English-speaking fans.
Oh, absolutely. You had to wait months for official translations or rely on slow fan-made scanlation groups to read anything.
But the commentators note that AI translation tools, which are now integrated directly into platforms like Twitter or X, or used by fans to instantly translate raw manga scan, have become so incredibly normalized accurate and fast that the historical barrier has effectively vanished.
An artist in Tokyo can post a sketch or a thought, and a fan in Chicago can read it, understand the nuance, and reply in perfectly translated Japanese seconds.
The algorithmic infrastructure that is threatening the animators' jobs is simultaneously creating a unified, global digital community that has literally never existed.
So, what does this all mean? I sit back and I marvel at the sheer, dizzying scale of this shift. We're talking about a technology that was ostensibly designed to make drawing a cartoon background slightly faster, right?
Yeah.
And it is inadvertently bridging global cultural gap, uniting disparate fan bases in real time, while simultaneously sparking intense macro-level debates about the global power grid, environmental collapse, and the value of human labor. It is so much bigger than just how a 2D character...
This raises an important question, really the ultimate paradox of technological progress. This algorithm connects us globally, yeah, but at what hidden cost? Are we as viewers and consumers ultimately paying for cheaper, faster, more abundant entertainment with the health of our physical environment and the mass devaluation of human creative capital?
Wow. Okay, let's take a breath and recap the massive journey we just went on because we covered a staggering amount of ground today.
We really did.
We started by looking at how major studios are actively hiding their use of AI out of pure fear of social media backlash, specifically on platforms like Blue Sky, and how they play linguistic word games with phrases like human review to maintain plausible deniability.
We examined the brutal, merchandise-driven economics of the Japanese anime, where art is viewed strictly as a product to sell figures via production, contrasting sharply with the clean soul artistic ideals of some Western.
We unpacked the hypocrisy of the global labor system, looking at how Western animators can only enjoy comfortable, balanced lives by outsourcing the grueling reality of animation to over sweatshops. Sweatshops that are likely using AI anyway just to survive the crushing demands of their West.
And we looked at the historical inevitability of this shift, just like the painful transition from physical ink to digital tablets or 2D cells to 3D computer generation. The steroids of AI are shifting the baseline of the entire industry. You either adapt to the algorithm or you get pushed out by the corporate bean counter, who are looking to triple their output without increasing their budget.
So, to you listening right now, the next time you sit down on your couch, open a streaming app, and boot up a beautifully animated sequence, or the next time you click buy on a piece of plastic merchandise from your favorite show, I want you to think about this comment.
Keep it in mind.
You now know the invisible, churning global machinery, the power-hungry data centers, the outsourced sweatshop, and the hidden algorithm likely brought that image. Once you see the strings pulling the puppets, it completely changes how you consume media. It's not just magic anymore. It's a massive algorithm.
And I want to leave you with a final thought to chew on, something that builds on the breakdown of those language barriers we just discussed.
Okay, lay it on.
The Clownfish TV host noted that AI translation is tearing down the walls between English and Japanese fans, effectively democratizing communication. Let's extrapolate that trajectory out a few years.
All right.
If generative AI tools continue to advance at this breakneck speed to the point where they eventually allow anyone, anywhere, to instantly animate their own complex broadcast quality stories straight from their bedroom.
Oh, wow.
Without needing a massive overseas sweatshop and without needing a corporate bean counter to fund a production committee, will the traditional studio system itself become obsolete?
That's a huge question.
Will the ultimate ironic result of these massive corporations rushing to use AI to cut costs be the total democratization of animation?
Oh.
A democratization that eventually destroys the studio monopolies entirely?
That is a fast, terrifying credit. Thank you so much for joining us as we unpack the uncomfortable reality corporate modern. Keep watch questions.